Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool to find the right size for your digging project. Visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. Did you know that your soil is alive? It's a living, breathing item. It has millions and billions of things in it, not only things that you can physically see with your eye, but microscopically, there are hundreds and millions of different things in that soil, and nematodes are one of those.
Right, so let's talk about what nematodes are,
okay,
besides something that lives in your soil. They are a tiny little microscopic animal. They organism. Yeah. They're a decomposer. They're often referred to as roundworms, but they are not related to the earthworm. They're more of a closer to like a fungus almost, okay, because they break stuff down.
They are the mediator between compost and breaking it down to a usable form for the plant to uptake.
Right. So some nematodes feed outside of the plant and some kind of burrow into the plant.
Okay.
But they live in the soil, so they go to the roots of the plant. So some of them will kind of like work their way into the roots and some of them work around the roots. But the good nematodes break the stuff down. They can be beneficial to the soil in that way. The bad nematodes cause the damage. So when they are working their way into the roots, they're damaging the cell walls of the roots, which then in turn damages your plants, because if you damage the cell walls of the roots can't bring the food from the soil.
And they inject their saliva into the cells of the plant and can introduce viruses and diseases to the plants. And that's why you're looking at a plant going, I'm not really sure what's wrong with this. Well, a lot, if not the majority, if not almost all the problems that your plant's going to face, a small percentage is above the soil. Many of it is due to what's going on beneath the soil. Yeah, you're going to have hornworms and cabbage moths and all that stuff. But when you look at the overall percentage of problems that your plant faces or issues it could have, below the soil is your top percentage.
Right. And so they are different, that's for sure. So they are mostly harmless, but they can cause problems. And one thing that the good ones do is they get rid of some pest species that could be causing problems for your garden, and that includes weevils, the clear-wing borers, cutworms, webworms, cinch bugs, and white grubs. So what happens is they attack and kill these pests by either injecting a bacteria into them or using them as their host.
Okay.
So all nematodes have these like little tiny mouths that have like a bunch of teeth, so they're almost kind of parasitic, like a leech.
Okay. Now, if you have bad nematodes, and the only way you're going to figure out if you have bad nematodes, it's not you walk out of the garden and go, well, that soil is that color, that's bad nematode area, and this soil has that color, and that means those are good ones. Unless you see, and you plant a plant in the ground and you start seeing effects on that plant, and it's not from above, then one of your telltale signs is it could be that you have bad nematodes. If you've bought that plant from a questionable retailer or friend that has bad nematodes in the soil, that is a way of transferring them into your garden. But if you've grown in the same area for decades, if not a lifetime, and you've never had ill plants, then you don't have to necessarily worry about the issue of having bad nematodes in your soil. I know there's places like in South Florida where they have to do raised beds because the soil is so negatively impacted by the bad nematodes that they just convert to raised beds, and that's how they do things.
Right. So one thing you want to keep in mind is with the bad nematodes is if you do have that problem, you would want to pull that plant out. You could sprinkle some diatomaceous earth in the soil and then mix it up and that will help kind of get rid of the bad nematodes. But also throughout the season, if you feel you have that nematode problem, just keep kind of disturbing the soil in that spot.
Yeah, you keep want to till it over the course of the growing season, the winter months, expose the nematodes to the environment where the roots were at. Throw that soil, till that up, and the freezing temperatures and the dry, cold winds will help kill some of those surviving nematodes. Now, it's not necessarily you're going to get rid of all of them, because it is okay to have some bad nematodes in the soil. Mm-hmm. You just don't want to have that overpopulation of them that controls everything that's going on, which is detrimental to the plants.
Right. Another thing is, as Joey had mentioned, bringing them from the garden center to your home. Another thing is if you feel that you might have bad nematodes, and just in general, like if you have maybe garden shoes that you think could have some sort of pest on them, you don't want to keep chomping them around your garden. Same thing with like shovels, trowels, clippers, whatever.
Yeah, if you're going from your backyard to the community garden to a friend's backyard, this is where not only nematodes, but the jumping worm eggs can be transferred over. How do you know if you have bad nematodes? Well, there are signs of stunted plant loss and vigorous reduction of yield, unusual growth habits, and when you dig the plant up, the roots, you can visually see that there is something not right with those roots. They're damaged, and this is a persistent problem when you have nematode infestation. And the best situation which you can do is everything. When we talk about gardening, and that's why it's very rare that you ever have a national syndicated gardening show like a sports show or a political show, because there's so many different geographical areas and microclimates and zones in the United States where one answer does not fit all the problem. If you have a problem, maybe you're in Texas, if you're in Portland, if you're in Raleigh, you want to get a hold of your local extension office and see what they know about the problem, see what they recommend, because yeah, it may work well here in Milwaukee or South Dakota or wherever. Doesn't mean it's going to work well in Phoenix or Oklahoma City type of situation. So a lot of times in gardening, a lot of things do cross over where you just have to alter the dates and times for application, but some things it's regional and specific to that particular area of how to deal with it.
Some plants are more commonly attacked by the roots, or at the roots.
Okay, what would those be?
And that would include cherry tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, lettuce, corn, and carrots. And some that are more resilient to the nematodes include chrysanthemums, onions, rye, and alfalfa.
Well, I mean, if we don't, and you talk about if you're unable to grow some of those crops, whether you have bad nematodes or not, you can always support your local farmers market by going and purchasing them there. But those are good to know that those some are good and are more susceptible and others are not. And
I think one thing to note is that if your plant looks sickly or poorly,
you're not going to bring the baby back.
Well, no, but you want to figure out why.
Yeah.
So, as we talked about, tomato problems, it could be something like a lack of something in your soil. It could be something like a nematode. There's a lot of new gardeners this year, mm-hmm. and everybody who's like talking to me about gardening, I'm like, it's not going to be magical your first year. It's not a PBS television show. No, where you plant it in the first 8 minutes, and the second 8 minutes you harvest it, and everything's beautiful. Right. And one of my oldest friends, she's telling me, she's like, she's got 3 kids, whatever, and she's like, I will just be happy if I can just grow something. And I'm like, that is a really good goal, and I hope you get there. And she will, but it's just like, it's not going to happen instantaneously. And if you end up with a bunch of greens, you end up with a bunch of greens, or maybe you end up with pounds of tomatoes. But as Joey mentioned, you definitely want to support your local farmers market, and that's key. And then, just because, let's say you do have bad nematodes and you don't properly identify it, and you go, well, next year will be better. Next year will not be better because it will have the same results on the same family of plants in that area. And until you remitigate the soil, you add diatomaceous earth, you bring in good nematodes, which you can purchase online, and you can do your research on whether you feel that you need to bring in good nematodes or just bring in good compost that has those nematodes
already part of that ecosystem, then you need to be kind of thinking of what's best for your particular growing area and your zone there. But again, just because, it'll be better next year, it's not going to be better next year. Things don't magically create a fix for itself in the garden when it comes to these plants.
Right, and that's definitely something to keep in mind. And also that there is always something in your soil, and it's good to remember that there's good stuff and there's bad stuff, and it's not just you in the garden. Right.
So good nematodes, yes. Bad nematodes. Good nematodes are good for your garden. Bad nematodes are bad for the garden. And there can be a balance or can be a harmony for good and bad. But if you have an overpopulation of those bad ones, you're going to see ill effects on a lot of your crops.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.